number of hours that someone needs to sleep in order to get refreshed and grow that neural network?
Everyone's different. So we're really just finding that sleep is important. One thing that there's sort of contradictory evidence. It does seem that sleep patterns are influenced by what culture you're in. So people, for example, in Singapore have amongst the lowest amounts of sleep, maybe 6.5 hours, if I remember correctly. And others they approach more like 8 hours. But I think it really depends on the person, because for me, for example, I try to aim at around 8 hours. Sometimes that means I get about 7 hours because it takes me a while to fall asleep and stuff. I do know some people who get by and they seem to be quite efficient with only 5 hours or so. Other people need 9 or more hours. So I think watch yourself and don't gut it out, because you can. But actually, it turns out that your memory suffers, your ability to learn suffers if you are neglecting your sleep.
Okay. Okay. The other thing, the second question that I had was, when you said spacing out learning, not cramming everything in one step. So does that correlate to a good memory as well? Like once you start spacing out learning process over a period of time, does it correlate to having a good memory than cramming everything in one shot? And does cramming everything in one shot make us lose memory faster? Is there any correlation or?
Well, there's still a lot of work to be done, so I'll just kind of give you my sense of things. Research has shown that, like, if you cram at the last minute, it can be effective for the test, that's coming right up. But so this can go along okay as long as the material is not too hard. But for example, in the US, sometimes we'll see this thing where a student is a superstar in high school. They're just really good. They excel on everything, and they cram at the last minute. And then they get to college, and they start really delving into the depths of calculus, advanced chemistry, and so forth. And all of a sudden, they're struggling. And the reason, and they do really poorly. And the reason for that is they're very smart people, so they could cram at the last minute in high school and still do well. But then when they really started hitting tough material, they hadn't learned to space out their learning, and they thought they could still do it with that cramming approach. And it just doesn't work as you start moving into deeper and tougher material. For that, you need to start laying that good infrastructure. And so it's a wise idea to start building the habit early. And more than that, if you do a little bit, if you're able to get yourself to do a little bit every day, it reduces the feelings of stress and makes life so much more fun. And a very, very important thing is, in all of your life, there are always going to be overwhelming amounts of things for you to do. I don't care what level of school you're at, or if you're in work, or, I mean, even my husband says during retirement, he says, I need to hire an assistant, but really the main thing that everyone should do is schedule, first off, what time do they want to take off? What part of the day is going to be your part of the day? Now, if it's finals time, maybe it's like 3 minutes at the end of the day that you get to read something different or talk with friends or something. but normally you want to make sure you're scheduling some part of the day that is fun, that you like. And that's what you want to be working for, is to be able to focus as intently as you can during the times when you're supposed to be working, so that you can really enjoy those times off. Oftentimes, I think what students tend to do is they've got something to do the next day, so they kind of monkey around, squirrel around with just having fun. And then around 7, 8 in the evening, it starts to hit them that they've got to get ready for the next day. And it gets this little stress, anxiety feeling comes up, and they start working. And you can do this, but it makes your life so much less, you're so much less in control of your life. You're letting other circumstances drive you, instead of, if you work kind of diligently during the day, say 5 o'clock, I'm calling it quits, and then I'm go to the movies with my friends, or just sit out and hang out together, whatever. You are being the driver, and it's actually a much less stressful way to live your life.
So it's a personal question. Is it easy to do that? Like, I have been in the situation what you actually explained. So I'm 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 starting up, and there is always a ton of work, and and most part of the day, I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like pushing myself hard to finish that day's work, and it seems like I'm not in control. What's the trick to make sure that I get back and do things the right way?
One thing that sort of a trick that I've cottoned on to is I try to decide what is the one thing that day that I want to be. I would be really happy if I got it done. That's reasonable, right? That's actually doable. And then that evening before the next day, I say, what is that thing? What is the one thing that, and sometimes I'm like, that's all. If I just do that. But I also know that there's going to be lots of emails and other kinds of things distracting me. And I know that if I get that one thing done, that's actually a big deal. And so day after day after day, I'm doing that one thing. And I am actually moving forward very nicely, even though at the time it doesn't feel like it. So just by keeping that concentration each day on that one thing, and then you feel like there's a sense of accomplishment, you've done it. So I don't know, putting priority on the one thing that you want to get done each day as the main thing, and then making sure that things can arise. You may not end up doing it, but I found that approach is a very good one to move forward day after day.
Okay, sure. The next thing as a follow-up is the focus mode and the diffuse mode that you spoke about. I assume it's not only for learning, it's also for work. For anyone who's working, it's they need to have a focus mode and they need to have a diffuse mode, right? So when you say focus mode, okay, so a person is working on something and he's focusing on something important. So what is a diffuse mode? How exactly can a person diffuse from the focus mode?
Okay, it is not like so when you go into focus mode, all you have to do is turn your attention to something and boom, it's on. It's not like that for diffuse mode. You can't just say, oh boy, I'm going to go into diffuse mode now. It is like saying, oh boy, I'm going to fall asleep right now. You just can't. Your brain doesn't work that way. I think of it as an alternate form of consciousness. Who's in control? And when you're focusing, that one is in control, right? So focus mode's in control. The only way to now there's sort of two things going on here. For diffuse mode, you let that start getting in control when you are not focusing on anything external, in the sense of you go out for a walk. You know, there's nothing like driving you where you're focusing your attention, unless you see a squirrel or a monkey in a tree and that grabs your attention, you're focusing on that. You're more just sort of being open to things. And sometimes it's kind of boring, but it's important because that's when your mind can kind of range freely and start making these connections. And brilliant thinkers through history, in fact, have often done some of their greatest thinking when they were out for walks. So it's, but when you're taking a shower, have you ever noticed ideas come to you in the shower a lot? You're not able to look at anything else. You're just like taking a shower and there's nothing else to think about. Or you're riding a bus. Motion seems to activate this kind of, so Howard Gruber, a creativity expert, called it the bed, the bus, or the bath, is where these kind of creative ideas often seem to arise. And those environments seem to induce our minds to stop focusing on things and relax somewhat. But also sometimes it can help you if you just switch your attention from one thing to another. And that's letting go of that one area. And it seems to kind of be able to relax. So even if you're working on math and then you switch to your study of, English or Spanish or whatever you're studying, and you work on that for a while, then when you come back to this first, there is some neural processing that takes place that even though you haven't gone relaxed, you're still looking at it with fresh eyes. And this is often why I say there's a technique for test taking that I call it hard start, jump to easy. And what that is when you're given a test, if it's a really hard, you look at the test, and the first thing you do is you kind of look over the questions really quickly. Now, first off, if you have not studied for this test, then just do the easy questions and take whatever, point you can. But if you've studied, then look over the test and then pick the hardest question first. Start working on it, and you'll probably only go maybe a minute or 2 minutes and practice making yourself stop as soon as you feel like I'm on the wrong track. I don't know what to do. Stop at that point and switch to another test question. Work on that. If you want to, pick an easier one so you'll get more confidence. Maybe work on a different one. And the stress of the test really gets your mind off of that first question. You get onto these other ones. And then after you've finished the other question, maybe come back to this first one and you'll be surprised. You'll go further along on that first question because you've had time to, as you were focusing on the second question, your brain is kind of parallel processed working on the first question in the background. And you'll find that when you return to it, you can make more progress on it. So this start with the hard question. So hard start, jump to easy, and then later come back and you'll find that you can make much more progress than if you did all the easy ones and then waited for the hardest question at the very end. That's when you're stressed out. You have no time. No, don't do tests that way. That's not a good idea.